Um, I'm the licensed clinical behavioral health professional here at the Carpenters Center for Health, and we're going to be talking about living with depression today. Um, Everyone's going to be muted. If you do have a question or anything to say, I have everybody over here on another screen. If you want to raise your hand, if you want to type something in the chat, if you have a question, go ahead and do that. I would feel free to ask anything. This is being recorded, so just know that, and please be respectful of other people's privacy. Don't necessarily share what's being shared here with other people, in terms of what other people are saying. Hello, Roberto. Thanks for joining us today. So what I hope we can cover today is there's a specific perspective on depression that I'm taking, and it's through the core principles of ACT. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that. And within ACT, the three things I want to stress for us and for anybody who's going through depression is how do we use our values to bring a sense of purpose and fulfillment? How do we understand how our interactions with our thoughts, our emotions and experiences, how suppressing them can be negative and how interacting with them can be a positive thing for us? And then how do we increase contact with the present moment? The slides are going to be sent to you via an email afterwards. There will be a survey. I do have some resources that I'm going to be emailing you. If you do have, grab a piece of paper. We're going to need it throughout the session today. Some of this is going to be interactive, so grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. So let's just talk about depression in general as an overall. I mean, if you're here, you probably experience some form of depression, know somebody who has, or maybe you are here just to learn. And here are several symptoms of it. Not going to necessarily go over them, but you can read them here. Different causes. There isn't one cause to depression. It can be any of these things here. It can also be biological. It can be inherited. And it's not something that maybe nothing has necessarily happened to you, but you could be predisposed to just having a little bit of it based off of your parents and what maybe they went through. And can also be a product of maybe something you're going through in the moment. And so just a quick slide on medications. Wanted to talk about it, even though we're not really focusing on medications today. But things I wanted people to know, because a lot of medications can be scary or intimidating for especially something like depression, is that medication for a lot of mental health things don't cure, but they help with the intensity of maybe what you're feeling. It may help ease it a little bit so that you can use other skills and other things to be able to deal with whatever you're going through. And the benefit really depends on how severe your symptoms are. It definitely has a larger effect the more severe depression you're going through. And it really helps treat the biological component. And so that biological component, it's trying to balance out some of the chemicals in your brain called neurotransmitters. We're not really going to go into that. If you are questioning medication, I would suggest you talk to your doctor about it and what the next steps are. If you don't have a primary care, I'd suggest you come and see one of our physicians here or any at the MCL sites. There's all these different sites you can go to. And I think most of them, if not all, would be comfortable in talking with you about what kind of medication options are available to you. The medications take a few weeks to build up. And what you're really looking for in those first few weeks of starting one are negative side effects. And you start off at a pretty low dose so that if something does happen, it's easy to just take you off of it. Wait till those negative side effects subside, and then try something else. And I would say the best thing to do is to do, if you are thinking about medication, is to do medication and therapy. A lot of the times, right, medication is like the glasses. They can correct your vision, but glasses don't inherently teach you how to read. And so that's where the therapy comes in. It's the teaching, it's the learning, it's those kinds of things that maybe you didn't have the energy or the ability to do because the depression was too great. And I think a lot of people think medication, it's one and done, that medication has, like science has the answer. And a lot of times, especially for these psychotropic medications, it's really, you got to try different ones. You may need to try different ones to find one that fits. It's not like Advil or Tylenol where it's like one and you know it's going to do it. You really have to try to figure out which one's going to be the best for you. Again, for anyone who's joining, thanks for being with us today. I'd say if you had questions, please put it in the chat as I go through this presentation. One thing I wanted to go over are there are some myths that we believe, that we sort of subscribe to, that can lead to us feeling more depressed. And the first myth is that the happiness is a natural state for us. And I would say a normal state is an ever-changing state of emotions, just like the weather. The weather is always changing, and so are our emotions. We shouldn't expect to be happy all the time because that's unsustainable. You can't feel an emotion for so long without feeling anything else with like anxiety, fear, or sadness. And so the definition of happiness is a state of pleasure or contentment. It's a state. And there is no such thing as lasting happiness, because how long does a happy feeling last? Right? I think a better definition of happiness is living a rich and meaningful life. Right? What are those things that are rich and meaningful in your life? You think of career, relationships, kids, parents, etc., all these different things. And the things that make life rich and meaningful don't only come with happiness, because relationships, as we all know, come with difficult parts, and those are going to bring about difficult emotions. And so this can be really difficult. It's that if you're not happy, something's wrong with you. I think if you're not happy, you're normal. Because like the other 2 points, happiness isn't always like this ever state that we can be in. And I say social media can be largely a blame to it, because you see other people living happy lives all the time. And you don't see what those other situations are like when they're not in those really perfect moments, or, I mean, TV shows, movies, all these kinds of things. Life is difficult, not always, and there will always be some level of pain and suffering we go through. So that's normal. So let's go over some things about ACT. It stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. I bring this up because if you feel like some of the things I talk about today resonate with you, or you like the way it's presented, this might be a therapy that you want to pursue. Maybe find a therapist, read more about it, read books. And if you don't want to go to therapy and you want to try to do it through books and videos and things like that, this is what I would suggest to look up. And so as we go through life, We're always doing something, even if it's staring at the TV, right? That's still doing something. Some of the things we do are pretty useful and they can help us move towards a better life. And so that's what I would call these towards moves. Some examples would be if you care about family and friends, you're seeing them often. If you care about your health, you're exercising, you're eating balanced meals. And then, so when we're doing these moves, we're acting effectively and we're behaving like the sort of person we want to be. We're doing the things that make our lives most meaningful. There are other things that have the opposite effect. They take us away from the life we want to build. And so I would call these away moves, right? These are away moves, meaning we're acting ineffectively. We're not behaving how we want. For example, like avoiding difficult emotions by numbing ourselves, by watching TV, mindlessly scrolling on social media, eating food. Like when we fuse with the thoughts and emotions that are really negative, we may cancel plans with friends because we're overwhelmed. We isolate, we stay home, we don't want to go out. And that's not really what we really want to be doing. And so that's really taking us away from that life we want to live. So all day long, we're doing moves towards, we're making moves away. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, and it changes from moment to moment. And so when life is hard, it's really easy for us to make those moves towards the life we want. But life isn't like that. Life is tough, and a lot of the time we don't get what we want. And so we encounter difficult situations, thoughts, feelings. And all of these things can propel us one way or another. So the problem is that our default setting for most of us is that when these difficult thoughts and feelings show up, we tend to get hooked by them and they pull us away from the things that we really want. Or they might hook our attention instead of focusing on what we're doing. We get lost in thoughts and feelings. Let's say we're hanging out with family and then suddenly a negative memory comes up. We get overtaken and we're sort of stuck in that thought and takes our attention away from family. And we might not make great decisions when we get hooked. And so all of us do this to a certain extent. All of us get hooked by certain things. It's normal. No one's perfect. But if we get hooked a lot, it can create problems like anxiety or the depression that we're talking about. And so it boils down to getting hooked by these difficult thoughts and feelings and moving away. And so there are times, however, that we can unhook ourselves from emotions and thoughts. Think about the times when you're able to, when you're feeling depressed, somehow this source of energy comes up and you're like, no, I need to get out of the house. I need to go do something. And so you just go and do it. All right. You unhook yourself from that tiredness, from those depressive thoughts and emotions. And you're like, nope, I'm going to do something else. And so this is that choice point. This is that phrase of making a decision when you're in a challenging situation is how are we going to respond to this? How do I respond to this memory? How do I respond to this emotion? What do I really want? And so in order to do that, we need to really know what life we want. And so that brings us to our first point in being able to think about, is this getting me the life I want? Is what am I doing working for me right now? Is this getting me the life I want? Is this helping me be the person I want to be? So how do we learn to react differently with our emotions? There's this phrase called mental flexibility, psychological flexibility. What it really talks about doesn't really matter what it's called. It's our ability to handle our emotions as they come. And ideally, acting on long-term goals instead of these short-term impulses. And so we can become more flexible by focusing on doing things and taking actions that move us towards our ultimate goals and values. So let's do what matters. Being willing to experience our emotions instead of ignoring them or bottling them up. And learning to be present, knowing what goes on around us, knowing what goes on within us, and not sort of shoving that stuff down because it's too difficult. Any questions so far? No, nothing? All right. Our first thing, we're going to the do what matters. Let's try to find our values. So let's say you're on a road trip to the Smoky Mountains and you hit traffic. Everybody hates traffic. I don't think I've met anybody who loves it. But you could be in that trip. You could say, I guess we can't go anymore. I'm going to exit and I'm going to turn around. Let's go home because we hit traffic. You're probably not going to act like that. You're probably going to deal with it because you want to go on vacation and you somewhat expect to hit some traffic. Even if you don't like it, you're going to deal with it. And even if you don't want to deal with it, you might exit early. You might go take a detour, stay somewhere for a little bit until rush hour is over, and then you continue. But why don't you go home? Why don't you turn around and leave? Right? It's because you want to be on vacation. You want to spend time in nature or family and all these things. And so values are our why. It's okay that they can change for different parts of our lives because, I mean, what you cared about as a child is different about in your 20s and your 40s and your 60s, right? The things that we value change. So what's the difference between goals, plans, values? I would say goals are the things you want to achieve. Plans are the things you make to get there. And the values are what inform your goals or how you want to live. Pain and procrastination, these are two things that can get in the way of our values because we tend to prioritize the short-term relief from pain over our long-term goals. And that's what procrastination is. It's a reaction to pain or something uncomfortable because we don't want to deal with it. So it makes us forget what we're ultimately going after. So how do we identify values? Think about who do you admire? Why do you admire them? What's important to you in this part of your life? Who are the people who are important to you? What type of person do you want to be in those relationships? Careers, hobbies, when do you feel the most alive? What do I complain about, right? That's a thing of that shows what you do care about. And then if you were to ask people, what would you want them to say about you, right? How would you want them to describe you as a person? So this is where this piece of paper comes into play. Everyone take a piece of paper out, take a pen. I want you to write down these three categories: not important, important, and most important. I've got 10 different values we're going to go through. And what I want you to do is just categorize them into each of these categories. See some people with pencils already. What I want you to do is to write the word in bold, the bolded word. The rest of it's just a description for you. So first word would be acceptance. To be open and accepting of yourself and others. If you need more time, feel free to put in the chat or come on mute. I'm going to move to the next one. caring, to be caring towards myself, others, the environment. Excitement. Seek, create, and engage in activities that are exciting, stimulating, or thrilling. Generosity. If you aren't able to do this with us, that's okay. In the email afterwards, I will be sending out a paper version with a lot more values. Independence, to be self-supportive, choose my own way of doing things. Persistence, to continue resolutely despite problems or difficulties. Respect, be respectful towards myself or others, to be polite, considerate, show positive regard. Safety, to secure, protect, ensure safety of myself or others. Spirituality, to connect with things bigger than myself. Trust, to be trustworthy, to be loyal, faithful, sincere, and reliable. So at the end, you should have something like this. If you missed any of them, all 10 of them should be up here. And what you're most interested in is the most important category, because these are the ones that obviously are the most important to you. And these are the ones that when you're thinking about what the life you want to live, this is what you want to look to. Am I living these out? What does it look like to exhibit trust, to exhibit acceptance, to be caring? And so you think, how is this supposed to help me with depression? Right? Remember, depression can feel like a dark cloud that obscures our view of the bigger picture of our life. And so a way out of the cloud is to focus on those core values and how you want to be living. All right, I want to be caring towards others. So even though I would rather sleep all day in bed, I'd rather stay home. I'm going to hang out with a friend who is going through a hard time because that's who I want to be. I don't feel like it now, right? I don't want to get hooked by it. I want to keep my eyes on this is who I want to be. This is the type of friend or person I want to be to others. That's sort of how values can come into play with all of this. So a second part of that triangle is open up, how to move towards acceptance. Acceptance can be a loaded word. Does that mean I have to accept my depression? I mean, yes and no. Let's talk about how the struggle is the problem. It's not the solution. And so keep this piece of paper with us because we're going to still use that now. All right, so now that we know our values, what can we do with all the negative emotions and thoughts that get in the way? One thing we can do is notice that the struggle with our emotions and thoughts is the problem. It's not the solution, right? We don't necessarily need to learn how to struggle with it, but it's the struggle itself. And so if we take a piece of paper and we hold it up in front of us, let's write down an emotion, a memory, urge, craving. Right. Let's say I put sadness down. You can't see that because I wrote it. Let's do it again. All right, so imagine this sadness is in front of you. And then what you're looking at in front of you are the things that really matter, right? So here I have vacations, family, pets, eating good food. To your right, we have all the problems and challenges you're dealing with in your life today. conflict, someone passed away, loneliness, financial issues. You're on the left-hand side, you have cooking, all these things that you need to do today on a regular basis to make your life work. All right, so you have all these things in front of you. We have this emotion, this thing we're dealing with, and if we try to put it in front of us, it's blocking all of those things that we have in front of us. And so if we try to hold tightly to this, we try to push it away as far as possible, right? It just takes energy. Pushing away takes energy. What we have learned from others, our culture, our upbringing, is that we should take this, we should crumple it, we should try to throw it away, we should try to ignore it, right? Sooner or later, we start to have all these piles of papers just surrounding us because it's filled with all these things we're trying to avoid, right? It's distracting, it gets in the way, right? If someone we cared about was in front of us, it's hard to give them our attention when we have something in front of our face. So this is the struggle. The struggle is trying to take this, crumple it up, throw it away, right? We spend all this time and energy and effort to do that. But what I'm suggesting us do is that we take this and we just put it down in front of us. We can still see it. It's still here as part of our life, but we can now engage with the other things around us, right? We don't need to keep on struggling with sadness, struggling with depression. Let's leave it here. It is with us, and yet these things are also with us as well, right? It hasn't necessarily gone away. We can learn from this. Our emotions are tools that we can use to learn from them about ourselves, about what's going on. Because our emotions communicate. They communicate with us, they communicate with others. We act, our face, we have facial expressions, our posture. The emotions communicate through all these things to other people. Right? At some point, we learn to control it, to not show it. And sometimes that can be helpful. We need to be able to compose our emotions during a meeting or going into an interview, or maybe the space we're going into isn't some place where you're going to get support. You're going to get criticized if you're crying, and we need to be able to stop that. But most of the time, it makes it difficult for others to know what we're experiencing and if we need help. Because if we get really good at shutting it down, then no one really knows what's going on with us. So, right, we struggle, we control, and we try to do that with our sadness. And sometimes that controlling of sadness turns to anger, and that anger comes out towards other people, right? Someone is doing something that's annoying to you and you snap at them. It's not really that you're angry at them, it's that we're busy trying to deal with, we're being overwhelmed with sadness, that we react in anger. We push them away. And sometimes emotions motivate us. I think depending on what the emotion is, fear motivates us to hide. It can help motivate us to fight back. Anger motivates to defend ourselves. Sadness tells us we might need to slow down and rest. Guilt motivates us to make amends, repair relationships. Love motivates us to love, care, and nurture others. And so related to that is emotions will really show us what's important in our lives, and something that we care about. We can't really, I've done a presentation on anxiety, and right, anxiety and what we worry about can show us what we really care about. And that's a helpful reframe for something like that. And so is sadness. We get sad after conflict with loved ones because that's what matters to us. That relationship is important. And maybe that's something that we want to keep. And so that's something to work towards and work on trying to repair. So, right, opening up ourselves to our emotions, experiencing it, having this here with us allows us to experience it and keep moving forward in our life. It's that we don't have to keep on struggling against it and trying not to feel. Instead, we can feel and continue with our lives. So the final point of the triangle is trying to be present. We're trying to be aware of what's around us. Right? Remember, all of these ideas and skills that we're talking about today are trying to help us become more mentally flexible, able to experience our emotions and roll with them and do and work towards this life that we want. And so we talked about how our values can guide us through that cloud of depression. We moved on to talking about being willing to experience our emotions, which can free us up, free our energy up, free our focus up for others. And now we're going to talk about how do you be present in a moment despite the emotional storm we may be in. All right, so sometimes our experiences of emotions are going to be like an emotional storm, and we're the boat. All right, the boat tips from side to side, gets bashed by waves, you may get seasick. And when we're in the middle of it, there's really little you can do but ride it out. I don't know if anyone here like has been on boats or been on cruises or been on a boat when you're on a storm. I guess I would equate it as being in an earthquake too, because you can't really do anything about it. Once you're in it, you're just like, well, I guess I have to ride it out. But suppose your boat, right, sails into a harbor right before the storm hits. What's your priority in that moment? Right, you got to tie the boat up, you got to drop the anchor. And that harbor is going to keep you safe from some of the storm. And that anchor is going to keep you from being pushed this way and that way. And so it's the same with us. We need to be able to drop an anchor during emotional storms. It doesn't make the storm go away. We can't control that. We can't control the emotions that come as much as we try. But it holds us steady until that emotion passes. Because I think the lie that we sometimes believe is that I'm going to feel like this forever. I'm going to feel like this for so long. And it may feel like you've been this way for a long time. But all emotions have shelf life. We will go through a process and that emotion will then move on. So this is a skill they call dropping the anchor. It starts with acknowledging your inner experience. This sounds like I'm feeling sad. I'm having painful memories. I'm really angry, right? Trying to label what you're experiencing. C stands for come back into your body. So acknowledge what you're, come back into your body. So that means pushing your feet into the ground, feeling that pressure on your feet, clenching your fists, standing up, stretching, right? As I'm doing this, I'm noticing I've been sitting here a long time and like my muscles feel a little sore, taking a deep breath and feeling it on your lungs. And then an E stands for engage with the world. And so what that means is trying to turn your attention back to what's going on around you. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? All these kinds of things. So there's an acronym ACE to help you remember these things. Oh, whoops, forgot I did this. Let's see, what time is it? 6:07. I do have a example of what this sounds like. Let's see if I've shared my audio appropriately. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Your thoughts and feelings.
Give me a thumbs up if people have videos on. Could you hear that?
Notice what your mind
Okay,
is doing and what your...
let me restart this then.
Notice your thoughts and feelings. Notice what your mind is doing and what you're feeling in your body, and just acknowledge they are present. Now come back into your body. Push your feet into the floor, straighten your back, take a breath, get control of your arms and legs, move them around. And now expand your awareness to the world outside you. Open your eyes and ears, look around. What can you see and hear and touch and taste and smell? And consider, where do you need to put your attention right now to make the most of this moment?
All right, I'm going to be sending that out. If you want to be able to use that, feel free. When you've dropped the anchor, when you're in the storm while you're weathering, you're going to want to be doing things. A question to ask yourself is, am I doing something to help me move towards the life I want, right? Is me watching TV, is this what I really want to be doing? Is this what's really going to be pushing me towards the life I want? Remember, calling back to the values we talked about earlier. If not, if the answer is no, then stop what you're doing and change it. Doing something, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go and maybe walk around the block, right? I want to be outside. I want to do something healthy, something for my health. And if the answer is yes to this question, then keep on doing what you're doing because you are moving towards the life that you want. So let's summarize things. Let's talk about next steps. All right, so what did we talk about? This is the short end of everything, right? We can get hooked by our emotions and our thoughts, and that leads us to do things that lead us towards a life that we don't really want to be living. How do we start making moves towards the life we want? First, we have to clarify our values. That brings us fulfillment and larger sense of fulfillment and purpose in our life. Then we try to drop the struggle with our emotions and be open to experiencing them because our emotions can tell us a lot about what's going on. They can motivate us to do certain things. And then if we increase the awareness of what's going on around us, we can drop the anchor to help us weather the storm and then come back to once the storm is over. And then we can fully engage with what's going on around us. So what do you do next? I would say take a look at that values list and take a look at your own actions in your life. Are you living out the values how you want to be living them out? Maybe simply noticing when you try to distract or avoid the difficult emotions that you feel. Try to sit with them a little bit, try to be a little curious about them. And then try dropping the anchor when you're feeling overwhelmed, right? That sort of just looks like what we heard is acknowledging your emotions, coming back to your body, doing something physical to feel something in your body besides what's going on, and then turning your attention outward. Okay. Some upcoming webinars. My next one, this one is going to be in person. My original was going to be understanding emotional bonds in relationships. So this could be familial relationships. It could be romantic relationships. There's a health fair that's going to happen in September 21st. And the time is to be determined. So keep an eye on your emails for when this is going to happen. My presentation is going to be in the middle of a larger health fair for everything that's available to you guys at the clinic and in other programs. And so just a reminder, us here in the Carpenters Center, we're here in Lisle. we have me, behavioral health, you have primary care, care management, physical therapy, and chiropractics. All of this is free to you. This QR code brings you to the website. I'm here Monday through Friday. My late day is today, Tuesdays. I'm here till 7. And so you can, I think that website is actually the wrong one, so don't go to that website. If you're interested and if you didn't know about it, there are 5 other locations that you can go to. All the locations are here. They each have a behavioral health specialist. They don't have chiropractics and physical therapy, but there are medical providers and a behavioral health provider. If you are Spanish speaking or you know people who are Spanish speaking, Janet at Grays Lake is the only one who is fluent in Spanish. Also, if you didn't know, through the Carpenters Union, you have access to something called Lyra. If you don't feel like meeting with me or any of the 5 there, or something like the scheduling isn't working out, you get 12 free sessions through them. You can also access psychiatry if you're looking for medications, or you could come to us. And then, so this is the website. This is the email and phone number. That QR code will bring you to their website. So, Aisha, can we stop the recording? That way people can ask questions and don't have to worry about being what's it, like having this stay with them. Okay, is it still recording? I don't think so. Oh, it still is. Well, is anyone willing? Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Okay. Trying to see if we can still stop the recording. So let's see. Question from Jill. The energy it takes to get out of depression is exhausting, and sometimes I don't have the fight in me. I totally understand that. I totally get it. I think that's one of the things about depression is it saps the energy out of you, right? It makes it hard to do things. I think trying to do small things, in which you probably are already doing, is a good place to start. There is this idea that energy doesn't sort of manifest itself out of nothing. It's like a snowball that builds, and that I guess it's similar to the idea that, like, you know that if I get up and I go out and I just get out of the house, I'm going to feel a little bit better. It takes energy to do that, yes. And that I know that once I do feel better by a little bit, I can then do something else that will make me feel better by a little bit. And you sort of need to ride that train of, I just need to do one small thing that's going to make me feel a little bit better. But yes, I mean, part of the issue with depression is the lack of energy. I don't want to do any of these things. Sometimes feel like it's overwhelming and you don't know where to start. Yeah, if you don't know where to start, I mean, thank you for this person who sent me a message directly. If you don't want it to show up or anything, you can always just send me a direct message and I'll leave your name out. And you don't know where to start. I think a great thing to do if you don't have anyone you're talking to, and you sometimes it's just helpful to have someone else just sort of be a back and forth for you, to be someone to listen to what your experience is like, to validate some of that struggle, because the struggle is real. I mean, I know I just presented on all these things you can do and made it seem like it's really easy, but like The reality is it isn't easy. And it can be helpful to have somebody who can gently push you week by week. What are you doing this? What is that small action you're taking or you can take? Um, right? What are those values? And so I think the first place to start with, if you are struggling with it, is to is to think about what do you really value in life. I really like the values portion because it's like we get lost in depression on what we really care about. Because because what depression does is it turns us inward. It makes us think about ourselves. It makes us think about our life, and it doesn't allow us to sort of start thinking forward, because this is not what we want. We don't want to constantly be turned into ourselves. Um, and so the values is almost like the prying open of like, remember, this is what I want. This is the life I want. Right? Depression can come in and say, well, you don't have that. Yes, depression it can be insidious in that way. But at the same time, it's this is what I want to work towards. I feel this way, and this is what I want. All right, somebody asked, what are the symptoms to identify between being sad and depressed? Good question. I would say everybody gets sad and everybody gets depressed at some point. I think the difference between just feeling sad and maybe longer term depression is how long it goes on, right? Chronic versus situational. Um, Situational depression would be my dog dies. I'm sad for a bit. After a few months or maybe a year or so, or however long, right, you come out of that. Um, I would say if we're going back to, I guess if you're trying to figure out, am I depressed? There was that slide with a lot of those symptoms on it. And I would say it really depends on how debilitating is the depression? How much is it affecting your life? And in how, and if it's really impeding a lot of these parts of your life, like it's getting in the way of family, it's getting in the way of work, social, right? Then the depression may be moderate to severe. And maybe it's time to see a therapist, maybe contemplate getting on medication, those kinds of things. Somatic exercises to help depression as a tool. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not that experienced with somatic exercises, but if it works, it works. I'd say give everything a try. Um, I think there's also something called tapping. I think it's called, I think the acronym is like EFT, but I don't remember what it stands for. But I would say anything that you find, try it, right? I presented one way of approaching depression. There are many ways of doing it. So these are great questions. Thanks for asking them. Does anyone have anything else? Okay, so I will be sending out a survey. Please, 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 please fill that out just because it helps me it helps me to figure out what I need to do. And then if you have other topics you want to talk or want me to present about, that's the place to put it in. And I can make long ones, I can make short videos. We'll see what happens. So thank you all for joining me today, and feel free to enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, that's tough. I'm sorry about that, Victoria. I think grief is a different kind. Grief is a different kind of sadness. I would say, do you feel like you need to talk to somebody? If so, I mean, if I don't know where you're located, but we can do things via telehealth if you need to. So feel free to call the number or go online and schedule something, okay? Yep, there you go. Feel free to go in person. I feel like in person is the best usually. All right. Oh, you need the info again? Okay, let me put it in the chat for you. There you go. Take down that number because I think once I end the Zoom meeting, all of this, everyone, it's gonna go away. You got it? Okay. All right, take care.